Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. Today's episode, and I say this most episodes, but this one in particular, is going to be filled with information. I've got so many different things that I'm going to cover in this episode. I hope you can give me about 45 minutes to an hour of your time, and I'm going to get you completely caught up so you can join the conversation in whatever capacity you want to join it in. Today, I'm covering the possibility of an election coming up next month. That's something I've been talking about for months right here on the podcast. People told me I was crazy. Scott, there's no way we're having an election in November. We just had one in the spring. Well, we are closer than ever, everybody. In fact, I dare say that tonight, when Prime Minister Carney speaks to the Canadian people about the budget, we're going to have the groundwork laid for an election. The Liberals want it bad. They want to try and get a majority government, and they want to try and lock up their spot in power before they get any more unpopular than they already are. When you think about how high the Liberals were versus how low they are now, the Conservatives are in the lead, and the Liberals don't want to let them get any further ahead. They don't want to end up in a situation where Mark Carney is just as unpopular as Justin Trudeau because they've got nobody else. There's nothing in the pipeline, nobody waiting in the wings. If Carney doesn't get it done, the Liberals are done as well. Yesterday, the government House Leader, Steve McKinnon, gave us our closest indication yet that we're going to be voting very soon.
2 weeks from the budget. I think that what I'm seeing in Parliament worries me. The Bloc Québécois, who, without having even read the budget, eliminate the possibility that they will support it, and the Conservatives making just ludicrous demands with respect to the budget.
It sounds like you're worried about maybe Canada going to another election. Is that a realistic possibility Canadians should expect?
We have a minority government, but we believe we have a mandate. And when I see opposition parties not ruling out the possibility of voting for the budget, that's starting to worry me, but I think it's them that are misreading the mood of Canadians. If an election is necessary, we would obviously, reluctantly, because we don't think Canadians want an election, but election there will be. It's the opposition parties who have that decision in their hands.
Well, there you have it. I mean, you can't say it. Well, you can say it as dishonestly as he did, but you can't say it any other way. We're going to be having an election in November or December. The Liberals are the ones who want it, though. They want it because, again, they don't want Carney to get any more unpopular than he already is. They know the budget is a good excuse to say, well, we have to have an election. We lost on our budget. Or they can bring down the House before we even vote on the budget. There's a lot of ways they can do it, but make no mistake, we're going to be having an election soon. The Liberals seem to want it that way. And they want it that way because this is their only shot at getting a majority government. If they don't get a majority, they'll probably be gone sooner than later. And that's going to mean Canadians have to get engaged in politics again. And a great reason to check into Scott Fox After 9 every single day, because that's one of the big things that I cover here on this pod, which comes out daily. Looking ahead, Friday is a listener DMs episode, and I've already had some great ones come in. I got one yesterday, though, that really hit a nerve for me. Apparently, there's a lot of layoffs happening right now at Kids Ability. Kids Ability is an organization that helps out kids and families in so many different ways, particularly kids that have a different set of circumstances than most. Kids who find themselves on the autism spectrum, with disabilities, and more. I don't know why a charity, which I have to assume is probably doing pretty well. That seems like an easy one to fundraise for. I don't know why they're laying people off, but I am looking into this. I've had a number of people reach out to me about this, A, because they were an employee and they lost their job, or B, because they're a family who's going to lose some services. So that is one of the things I'm going to try and have a good answer for you on by Friday. Another topic that I promised I would keep you up to date on: the whales at Marineland. So I got a great story in this morning, and it comes from the East Coast. When I was talking about the whales and what to do with them, many people said, Scott, send them to that place on the East Coast, that refuge for marine life. Send them there and they can live out their years in the ocean in a safe place. So I did some looking and I couldn't find anything about this place, but sure enough, now a story has dropped. Organizers behind a plan to establish North America's first coastal refuge for captive whales say the Nova Scotia government has granted them approval to start construction on their province's eastern shore. The Whale Sanctuary Project, announced yesterday, Premier Tim Houston's cabinet has granted the organization a 20-year lease on 83 hectares of Crown land and coastal waters near Wine Harbor, Nova Scotia. Project organizers say that approval means they can start building a huge floating net enclosure for whales and dolphins that are retired from marine theme parks like Marineland in Niagara Falls. Okay, so that clears up the confusion. It's not built yet, but it is coming. And frankly, the timing on this couldn't be better. I hope this works out for the belugas. If it's really just a net enclosure that they've got to put in the ocean, I can't imagine that's going to take a ton of time to build. Maybe there's still time to save the whales at Marineland before they have to be euthanized or before the taxpayers have to fork over a ton of money. So congratulations, and I don't say this very often about Tim Houston, but congratulations, Tim. Your cabinet got this done. Looks like this sanctuary is going to get built, and that's fantastic news. Another topic I get asked to keep people up to date on all the time, the Jeffrey Epstein files. We still don't have all the files. They are still being held up by the U.S. administration. And I'll say it again, like I say every time this comes up. Every day that Donald Trump delays these files from coming out, he makes himself look more and more guilty. Well, yesterday, a book came out, a posthumous memoir from Virginia Giuffre. She is one of the victims who went public about being abused and trafficked at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, they say, even though there was no reason to think that she was suicidal, they say she took her own life back in the spring. A lot of people don't believe that. A lot of people think she was taken out before she could reveal the names. Well, she had a book ready to go. And the book was published yesterday, even though she has now died. I haven't read the whole thing, but I do trust some of the people who have written some reviews on it so far. And here's what I can tell you that I've learned. Yes, Prince Andrew, heavily involved with Jeffrey Epstein. It certainly seems that way based on the book by Virginia Giuffre. Apparently, Prince Andrew, while fairly nice about it, seemed entitled to be able to have sex with Virginia when she was 17 years old. Apparently, this was just a thing. She was just expected to do it. She also talks about a former prime minister. And I'm assuming she means former British prime minister, but apparently that prime minister was extremely aggressive, choked her almost to the point of unconsciousness. Apparently she was begging for this prime minister to stop, and that got the prime minister even more turned on. But she didn't name a name there. Well, I mean, this just adds to the story that everything around Jeffrey Epstein was gross. Yes, women were trafficked and they were made to do things that they did not want to do. Let's release the rest of the files here, U.S. administration. Let's release the rest of the files, Donald Trump, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, all of you. Stop obstructing this, get those files out, and let's put into the public domain what went on Epstein Island and surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. This book, although again, I haven't read it. I'm just going off of some of the reviews from people who have. Very, very damning stuff. We need to find out who paid money or who got it as a perk or a freebie even to do horrible things to people who did not want to participate. We need to find out what went on here, who was using their money or their power or what have you to take advantage of women. We need to find out what went on here. And I don't think we're going to make any progress until we finally get those Epstein files released. I told you I'd stay on top of it. That is a major development, and I am reporting it here in the podcast. One more thing before I get to today's content, and I know I'm almost 10 minutes in here, and I still haven't even gotten to today. We're going to be talking about the Auditor General's reports from yesterday. Also, Premier Doug Ford weighing in on the fact that GM is pulling out of their electric delivery truck manufacturing facility in Ingersol. But they're saying this one has nothing to do with tariffs. Okay, well, we'll come back to that. That is coming up on this episode. Yesterday, StatsCan released the inflation numbers from September. It was up 4%. Grocery prices were up 4%. In fact, inflation went up to 2.4% overall. Now, they play numbers. They play games, fast and loose, if you will, with these inflation numbers. And I think that they do that because they're trying to create a narrative. The Bank of Canada already knows if they want to lower our interest rates a week from today, next Wednesday. They already know if they're going to do it. If StatsCan comes out with data to say inflation is up, that really helps the Bank of Canada fit the narrative that we can't lower interest rates. Inflation is getting out of control again. Is anybody doing anything about the grocery prices? Does everybody remember about a year ago when the Liberals insisted they were going to fix this problem? And when Mark Carney said in the spring, judge me by the price at the grocery store. Well, Prime Minister, grocery inflation is way up. Groceries and gas were the two main culprits in inflation going back up again. I'm here to tell the Bank of Canada and that son of a bitch, Tiff Macklem, you need to lower rates again next Wednesday. They got to come down again. People wanted a 0.5 point cut in October. They've already done a 1/4 point. They've got to do the other quarter next Wednesday. It's just got to be done. Our economy is in really, really, really bad shape right now. People need interest rate relief. Let me give you just an example, not necessarily tied to inflation or to interest rates, but a sign that the economy needs something. Yesterday, the TSX had its worst day in 6 months. It lost 500 points yesterday. Now, in contrast, how are things going in America? Well, the Dow gained over 200 points. Right now, the Canadian dollar is at 71.32 cents US. Canadians are losing. By the time you factor in the exchange and the cost of converting that money, we're losing 30 cents on every dollar. We can't keep going on like this. We can't. We've got to do something. You know, at a time when we've got a 71-cent dollar, that should be fantastic for our manufacturers because people should be buying products like crazy out of Canada because they save 30 cents on every dollar. And even that's not happening. That should tell you right there the economy is in really, really rough shape. Bank of Canada, you got to cut those rates next Wednesday. That is something that I am going to be talking about a lot next week. Now it's time to jump into the content for today's episode of Scott Fox After 9. I'm going to start off with yesterday in Ottawa, our federal Auditor General. Who is this Karen Hogan woman, you may ask? Well, Karen is appointed as the Auditor General. It's her job to go through government files and figure out if the government is doing a good job and delivering a good service for a good price to the Canadian people. In a lot of ways, the Auditor General is kind of on the side of the taxpayer. So let's hear what the Auditor General had to say yesterday. There are a number of different things in her report, including the Canada Revenue Agency, the Canadian Armed Forces, and Indigenous relations. This is Karen Hogan.
Auditors from my office placed calls to contact centers and asked general or non-account specific questions. We found that agents' responses to individual tax questions were accurate only 17% of the time. And business tax or benefit questions were accurate just only half of the time. To test the accuracy of agents' responses to account-specific questions, we reviewed a sample of recorded conversations. We found that the accuracy was much higher when questions pertained to specific accounts.
Okay, let's pause it right there. Hold on a second here. You mean to tell me that when the Auditor General's office did the secret shopper program, when they called in to the 1-800 number for the CRA and asked questions, non-specific ones, but they asked questions, the CRA staff were only right 17% of the time. 17% of the time. When it came to benefits and business questions, they were only right half of the time. Do we train these people? I mean, when you get hired at the CRA, and they went on a hiring spree, by the way, they've got more employees than ever before. Do we train them? Or is our tax code just that complicated that even the people at the CRA don't understand it? If you think about it, there is a better way. There's a totally better way to do this. We should just simplify our tax code, make it easy. We've already got an army of people in our payroll departments, in businesses across the country. The payroll people, they already take off the appropriate amount of tax based on your income. Then we have a whole other army of civil servants at the CRA whose job it is to double check the work that payroll did. How about we just make this simple? If you make X number of dollars, you pay this much tax. If you get up to this much money, you pay that much amount of tax. And if you pay more, or if you make more than that, you pay tax on that income. The payroll people send it off to the CRA. Everybody's happy. We've got this extra layer of redundancy here that is costing the taxpayers a fortune. People don't understand how much they're paying in tax. And it turns out the CRA staff don't even understand. They were right 17% of the time. Weathermen have a better track record than the staff at the CRA. How is that even possible that the experts running our tax programs don't understand the answers to basic questions, even if they are non-specific questions? That is completely bananas. Now, the government's response is they've put in place a 100-day action plan. Ooh. Do you think that'll fix things? I don't know. Turns out they're also not very good at answering the phone. They drop a lot of calls. We are not getting good value for our money when it comes to the Canada Revenue Agency. I say disband basically the whole thing. Simplify the tax code. And you know what? If you've got a special circumstance like a business or you've got a special kind of deduction, then we can put a process in place for that. But let's just simplify the tax code. Make it arbitrary. You make this, you pay that. You make this, you pay that. And so on and so forth through all the different income tax brackets. This system now, where you pay a certain percentage on this amount of money, and then if you make more, you pay a different percentage on the difference, and then if you make more than that, it's a different percentage from the other two percentages. It doesn't work. It's not making sense. People don't get it, and clearly the CRA doesn't get it either. Here is more of the Auditor General.
To the Canadian Armed Forces. The first focused on whether the forces recruited and trained enough members to meet operational requirements. Between 2022 and 2025, the Canadian Armed Forces fell short of its target by about 4,700 recruits. Though the forces were able to attract thousands of applicants, only 1 in 13 started basic training.
Hold on a second here. So what did we do? Did we offer like free donuts and hotel stays and stuff to people if they wanted to consider joining the armed forces and then they backed out after they got their freebie? Is that what it was? Sign up for the armed forces and we'll give you a free t-shirt. And if you actually go through with it and join the armed forces, then you're a member of the armed forces. 1 in 13 people that showed interest in joining the armed forces actually went to basic training. 1 out of 13. What happened to the other 12? Did they take a look around and say, nah, I'm not going to do this? Was the pay not good enough? Were the accommodations not good enough? What is it? How is it that 12 out of 13 recruits skipped basic training, didn't even see it through to the first big step, which is basic training? 12 out of 13 walked. Why did they go there in the first place? What were they interested in? Or was there something that turned them off and said, I am not doing this? I think that that's a question we need more information on.
National Defence did not have enough living spaces at the right locations, including quarters, that met its own standard for living space per person. We also found that some buildings were in poor condition, lacking basic amenities such as safe drinking water or working toilets.
Okay, I think we're getting a little closer. I think we're getting a little closer to figuring it out. So we want these people to join the armed forces, and we only just increase the pay for that. And we bring them in and we give them a tour, and this is what you'll be doing and all that sort of thing, and this is what you're going to get paid. But you got to live here, and the drinking water may not be safe, and some of the toilets don't work. You mean to tell me that with the billions and billions and billions of dollars we spend on national defense, that we spend on our armed forces, that's the best we can do? Bases that don't have safe drinking water or running toilets? You've got to be kidding me. That's what billions got us? I mean, I don't see us with an excess of fighter jets or an excess of marine vehicles or an excess of just about anything. I assumed at least that the money we're spending was being spent on nice accommodations, taking care of our troops. It doesn't seem like that's the case. 12 out of 13 quit before they even got to basic training, and now we find out they don't even have safe drinking water or running toilets on some of the bases.
58% of federal organizations are not required to use the cybersecurity defense services offered by Shared Services Canada and the Communications Security Establishment Canada. Though some have opted in, this inconsistent use of services has resulted in a fragmented cybersecurity landscape that could undermine the federal government's ability to protect critical information and manage risks.
Okay, so we've got cyber defenses out there, but not everybody's using the program, and that apparently has left us with some serious vulnerabilities. I mean, throw it in the pile. It's getting big here, but that is another problem. Let's keep hearing more from the Auditor General's report yesterday. By the way, she does this in Ottawa in the media room at the House of Commons.
Our audit also found there were fewer emergency services agreements in place than in 2022. These agreements are essential for timely coordinated responses to events such as wildfires and floods, while mitigating the disruption to people's lives and damage to critical infrastructure. Sustained focus from Indigenous Services Canada to rethink how it delivers programs, while collaborating with First Nations to improve their capacity, is an important step to resolving these persistent issues, improve outcomes, and advance reconciliation. As I look ahead to the second half of my mandate, my unwavering goal remains that my office will continue to provide nonpartisan, fact-based information to parliamentarians and the federal public service so that they can move more easily to adjust and best direct resources towards outcomes that serve the diverse needs of Canada's peoples. The intention is to be constructive and focused on the pursuit of excellence and accountability for the public service. This has been the focus of my first 5 years leading the Office of the Auditor General of Canada, and it will continue to be the focus for the next 5.
Well, thank you very much, Karen Hogan, for your service and the great work you do, although it is hard to hear. I mean, if you think about how bad things are in Canada, and so much of it is linked to government spending and printing money, think about how much money we're spending and how poor a result we're getting. One of the things that I have tried to argue many, many, many times in this podcast is that government shouldn't run anything. They should set up the laws, set up the framework, set up the parameters, but they should let private business do things. And those are great examples of the government not doing a very good job. I'm not suggesting necessarily that we privatize the CRA, but you mean to tell me that a business would find it acceptable that they've got an astronomical payroll and only a 17% success rate? I don't think that business would be around for very long, but when it's taxpayer money, they just toss it around. When you think about the billions and billions and billions spent on our armed forces, and you hear that 12 out of 13 quit before they even got to basic training, and then you hear that some bases don't even have running water or working toilets, that's a serious problem too. Like, what are they doing with all our money? Where's it all going? If they didn't spend it on the bases, and we don't have a ton of new fighter jets, and we don't have a ton of new marine vehicles, and we don't have this, that, or the other thing, where did all of the money go? Did it all go to Ukraine? Did we save anything for here? Completely crazy. But that's the great work that the Auditor General does. She exposes stuff like that. And frankly, I think people need to know. I'm glad you heard this part of the podcast. Thank you for listening. Please go out and spread the word. Government is incompetent. They cannot manage these things. Somebody should be accountable. Heads should roll. Somebody should be fired over this. But nobody's going to be fired. You're not going to get the prime minister and his cabinet to agree to pay back the billions and billions and billions that they wasted. That's just our money gone, up in smoke. We have nothing good to show for it. Here's some of the Q&A with Auditor General Karen Hogan.
David Thurton, CBC News.
Hi, thank you. Your report on military housing found that quarters were often in poor condition and well below the standards that the forces have set out. Can you maybe paint a picture and provide some more detail on what exactly did maybe you see when touring those houses, if you did, or your team?
Members of my audit team actually visited 3 bases. And so we were able to look at the 45 buildings that were on these bases. And I could tell you the average age was over 60 years old. In fact, one building was built in 1930. We then looked at buildings that identified that they needed repair. So there was 32 out of 35 of the buildings that needed at least one high priority repair. And so what would that look like? Well, that might mean that that building didn't have safe drinking water. So there was improvements needed to the drinking system. Toilets weren't working, or there was structural damage to the exterior walls of the buildings. The kind of conditions that you and I wouldn't want to live in, and the kind of conditions I don't think we should expect members of our Canadian Armed Forces to live in.
I just want to apologize to all of the members of the Canadian Armed Forces on behalf of Canada. I'm sorry that we didn't prioritize you. I'm sorry that you have volunteered to make an incredible sacrifice to stand up for the rights of Canadians and those vulnerable people around the world, to try and keep peace, to try and make sure that Canada is safe. I'm sorry that you did that and we treated you like absolute garbage. That's the Auditor General of Canada, with a pretty scathing report about the deplorable conditions that we expect the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces to live in. That's unacceptable on every level. Can we agree on that? I mean, if we're not going to take care of them, let's just not have a military. Let's just outsource the whole thing to NATO or to the Americans or to somebody. But if we're not going to treat them right, we're not going to pay them well, give them proper accommodations, give them the equipment they need, and give them the same technology that every other military around the world or every other advanced military around the world has, then we should just get out of it altogether and stop wasting their time. Thank you for your service. We've given up. We're free to be invaded, or we're just going to pay somebody else to defend us. We don't need you anymore working your tail off and living in deplorable conditions. It's really, really sad. Hey, I want to let you know that if you're interested in seeing the entire report here from Karen Hogan, our Auditor General, it is available on YouTube. You can just search for Auditor General's report. You can find it on CPAC, that is CPAC on YouTube. The whole thing is there. It's about an hour press conference where she goes through all of the different issues here. And there's only 3 or 4 that she covered in this report. But either way, it's very eye-opening. And I think that that's just another great example of how our government is wasting our money. For the amount they spend, we should be getting way better results than we currently are and than what the Auditor General just laid out. I've got to move on here because I told you there's a lot of different things I want to still cover in this episode. Let's go to yesterday in Ottawa. Question period. This is the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre.
He admits they have to do better. It's not possible for them to do any worse, Mr. Speaker. The reality is today we learned that inflation is again on the march. All 4 measures of inflation are above Bank of Canada's targets. 2 are outside of and above the acceptable range. Food price inflation is rising 2 times the rate that Bank of Canada targets. No wonder we have 2 million people lined up at food banks every single day. This inflation has exploded since this Prime Minister doubled the deficit. Will he reverse his inflationary deficit and taxes in this coming budget?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I think we all know in this side of the House and Canadians, math might not be the cup of tea of the Leader of the Opposition. Neither may be economics, Mr. Speaker. But let me quote one of the authority in the world, which is the Director General of the International Monetary Fund, Mr. Speaker. She said just last week, then we have countries in the G7 that are in a better position. Germany and Canada stand up in that regard, Mr. Speaker. Both Germany and Canada recognize that this is a very testing time and they need to use their fiscal space. In the case of Canada, the Canadian authorities have been very decisive in taking action. Mr. Speaker, we're doing it.
First off, that was coming from the International Monetary Fund, and I don't have a whole lot of time for them. It is remarkable that the Liberals, give them full credit, because even when every metric is down, even when everything looks terrible on paper, and you can look at everything from our GDP to the number of people lined up at food banks, by every metric, we are not doing well. But they can always find some expert somewhere to say something or produce a report that they read up out in the House of Commons that suggests we're doing great. I mean, listen to the finance minister there. This is the guy in charge of the money at one of the worst times that most Canadians can ever remember. And he's making fun of the leader of the opposition, claiming Pierre Poilievre doesn't understand the economy or economics. Keep in mind, this guy wasn't the finance minister 6 months ago because he wasn't qualified to be the finance minister. He was doing like science and innovation or something like that. He was the guy going on and on about the fact that Canada's going to go to the moon. Now he's in charge of the money. And he's trying to tell Pierre Poilievre he doesn't know what he's talking about. Craziness again. I mean, holy cow. This whole episode is just shake your head material.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, his banker friends in Washington may think that they have fiscal space, but the single mothers who can't afford groceries have no space left at all to pay for liberal inflation. This government is forcing them to spend 70% more on the Canadian Revenue Agency. Today, the Auditor General revealed that only 15% of calls get responses on time. And even if someone does pick up the phone, there's an 83% chance they give you the wrong answer. Why does this government force Canadians to pay so much for such terrible service?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives. Trust me on that, Mr. Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against dental care, Mr. Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against the National School Food Program, Mr.
I'm going to stop this clown. That is just such an old, tired talking point. That is not what we are talking about here. We are talking about the fact that the middle class is strapped, and the Liberals don't see it. You know, you almost can't even fault them for it because they don't get it. They're not in touch with regular Canadians. When you walk through your subdivision, maybe walking your dog or taking your kids to the park or doing whatever it is you do, they don't roll in those circles. Liberals don't get it. They don't understand how bad it is for the middle class. If they did, they wouldn't be that patronizing of someone who's trying to influence change, someone who's trying to steer them in a different course and put the spending where it's necessary, to prioritize the cuts that need to be done, and to get our middle class prosperous again. They don't get it. The fact that all they've got is, well, you voted against $10 a day childcare. You voted against the school nutrition program. I just want to reemphasize, because it's been a while since I made this point, and sometimes we need to have these things reasserted. So let me just say this. The main talking point here out of the government side of the House of Commons is don't vote for the Conservatives because they voted against dental care. They voted against the school nutrition program. They voted against $10 a day childcare. In voting against it, it wasn't a vote against the concept. It was a vote against the execution. I think $10 a day childcare is great, and it's helped out a lot of families. But how they implement it, whether or not the funding is stable, whether or not $10 is the right amount. Could we have made it $15 a day childcare and save the taxpayers, the people who don't even have kids, or the people that paid for their own childcare, and save them maybe a couple of bucks on their check at the end of the month? There's a lot of different ways that you can look at an idea. The problem is the Liberals don't want to look at any other version of an idea other than their own. So when you hear the Liberal government stand up and say, don't you trust Pierre Poilievre because he voted against dental care. It wasn't a vote against dental care. It was a vote against the way that they're doing it. And I think if you're being objective, if you take a step back and look at how all of this is rolled out, you'll agree there was some ways that we could have made this better. Constantly attacking the Conservatives because of what they voted against and never questioning why they voted against those things. That's a big issue. And you know what? It won't be long. We're going to be having an election probably next month. When those candidates come to your door and they ask for your vote, straight up ask them. You can ask that Conservative candidate, are you really against $10 a day childcare? And they're going to tell you the same thing. No, we're not against that at all. We want to do anything that helps more women get into the workforce and that makes cost more affordable for the middle class. Full stop. That's what we want to do. Now, the way the Liberals wanted to do it is not feasible. And it looks like that $10 a day childcare program is now in jeopardy in a lot of provinces, including Ontario, because it wasn't rolled out properly. That's what the vote was against. I'm going to move on now. Let me get to the situation with tariffs. What are we doing here now? I'll play Premier Doug Ford and his response to GM closing down that electric delivery van plant in Ingersol. Coming up in a few minutes, that is another blow to the Canadian auto sector. That is hundreds more people losing their jobs. Hundreds more, maybe more. But first, where do the negotiations stand between Canada and the USA? Here's the guy who's in charge of those negotiations, Dominic LeBlanc.
Surprised to see this morning the report that we're possibly going to finalize a deal in the next few days. We're making progress. I'm in constant discussions on the weekend, again yesterday, with my American counterparts. We're making progress. We're into a level of detail that we hadn't seen previously, but we still have work to do, and my objective is to continue to do that work until we get to the deal, but we haven't set a deadline of a particular date in the next week or two. We'll just continue to do the work to get the right deal.
Real loosey-goosey there, not really committing to anything, not saying much, maybe trying to lower the expectations a little bit. That was Dominic LeBlanc. In fact, he did talk a little bit more. Listen to this. This is an interesting clip.
How far are you from the deal? How far are you from the deal?
I'm not going to give you an actual distance, close, 2 meters, 50 meters, 2 kilometers.
I don't think that a deal is that far off, but here's the way I see this unfolding here. Seems like we're not going to get an overall deal. We're not going to be able to come to some sort of an agreement where Canada and the U.S. are more integrated and we share prosperity and we share vehicle manufacturing and we share softwood lumber resources and steel and aluminum. And we are helping them and they are helping us so that we are, as North America, going to be an absolute powerhouse. You know, we bring the energy, we bring the gas, we bring the liquid natural gas, we bring the oil, we bring the rare earth and precious minerals, we bring the softwood lumber, the steel, the aluminum, they bring the brains, the chips, and all the other sort of stuff. We could get to that point, but it doesn't seem like we're there right now because the Americans really seem to like tariffs. And Canada still hasn't found a way to make it work for them and work for us. Are we 20 meters away or 2 kilometers away? Dominic LeBlanc wasn't saying. It looks like the way this is going is a whole bunch of individual deals on various sectors. We probably won't get a deal done on auto. We're probably not. And the auto sector is going to be under intense pressure to move back to America. We know that's going to happen. We can see it happening. It's already started. But can we work out a deal for steel and aluminum? Can we work out a deal for rare earth and precious minerals? Can we work out a deal for softwood lumber, for dairy, for all these other things? I guess. I mean, the Prime Minister talks all the time about how 85% of the exchange of goods is tariff-free. It's the other 15% we're talking about. So if we get deals in place that cover various sectors of that 15%, then we should be good, right? Not necessarily, because we do now have to renegotiate the Canada-USA-Mexico agreement, CUSMA. The U.S. is not going to agree to anything that doesn't benefit them. And the president has been pretty clear. He wants it to benefit Canada as well, but not at the expense of America. If we do get various sector deals done, what is that going to mean for the overall CUSMA agreement? Shouldn't they just be written into CUSMA? Maybe we should just renegotiate that now. I'm sure it's crossed their mind. I'm not going to second guess what they're doing because I still want to see a deal done. I still think that there's potential for it to be something great where Canada and the USA are in lockstep without us giving up our sovereignty. It's got to get it done. And it seems like, sometimes it seems like they're making progress and sometimes it doesn't. The fact that Dominic LeBlanc was so coy there leads me to believe something is coming, especially if an election is on the way. They're not going to let that election happen without at least a win in negotiating with Trump, because they can't make Trump out to be the bad guy in this one. We already know. Him and Carney are buddies. This whole I'm going to stand up to the bully thing was all nonsense. I talked about that yesterday. It's been proven now. So I'm not sure what the strategy is going to be in this election, but I seriously doubt they would come and ask Canadians for their vote without at least a little bit of assurance that they can get something done with the Americans. Before I go to Ontario Premier Doug Ford, let me go to, what are we calling him, a commentator? It's Kevin O'Leary. Kevin O'Leary is an interesting little pipeline between Canada and the White House. Kevin O'Leary, through his interactions at Mar-a-Lago, and I'm assuming some business deals as well, can talk to the president. I don't know if he's on a texting basis or if he can just walk up to the White House and knock on the door and get an appointment. But either way, the president does seem to listen on some level to Kevin O'Leary. What does he think about the situation we're in right now?
At the numbers. Look what happened to the Canadian economy. Look at debt per capita. Look at GDP growth. Look at foreign investment. Even our own pension plans don't invest in our country because of the policy that Freeland and Trudeau brought together. If he was the idiot king, she was the idiot queen.
That was Kevin O'Leary on the Can't Be Censored podcast with Travis Danrash. He's not wrong. He's not. This is a serious problem. The economy is not good. I mean, refer back to the beginning of this pod. Things are not going well. And that's O'Leary putting it in plain and simple terms, like he is so good at doing. Now I want to play a little bit of Ontario Premier Doug Ford. He was doing media scrums yesterday outside of Queen's Park. That's the Ontario legislature. And he got asked a number of questions. This is him on the GM electric van. I don't even know what they call it. I do remember the government put some money in for GM because GM was going to change the world by making electric delivery vehicles. And now GM says, well, turns out nobody wanted them. They've got hundreds of them just sitting there on the lot that they haven't been able to sell. Nobody wants these things, so they've got to shut down production at that Ingersol plant. Premier Ford, at one point yesterday, threatened to sue them.
Is this a bad bet, do you think, on Ontario's part to put money into this General Motors facility? And how do you get that money back?
Well, if they breach a contract, we're going to sue them. Simple as that. And he knows that. They've breached a contract. And we're going to make sure that we get another vehicle in that area.
I don't know if they're going to be able to get another vehicle. I'm not sure what goes into that. I assume GM on some level is probably looking to do something with that facility in Ingersol, but that's no comfort right now to the people who work there. Auto workers were told, in no uncertain terms, vote for me, I will protect Ontario. That was what they were told by Doug Ford. They were also told similar messaging from the federal government. Melanie Joly, great example. She's out there talking to any camera who will listen, talking about all the different meetings that she's having right now, trying to save jobs. So far, she's struck out. She'd be benched if she was on the Blue Jays because she has no success here. Listen to a bit of this yesterday.
So I think it's two completely different situations. When you look at Stellantis had an obligation to bring back the production to the Brampton plant, and they failed that obligation. And so that's why we're putting maximum pressure on the company. And I was on the phone again with Unifor, on the phone with Doug Ford and Vic Fideli this morning to talk about how we would continue to push. And you'll have more news from me before the end of the day on this. When it comes to GM, they decided to let go their Bright Drop, which was an EV vehicle that was not going well commercially. That's a decision they took. Of course, we'll hold them to account for any support we've given them to develop that model. But at the same time, we are creating a response group to make sure that we're bringing a new model, because the 1,200 workers at the Ingersol plant need to know that we're fighting for their jobs.
If you work at that Ingersol plant, do you feel better having heard that? She talked to a lot of politicians and she put together a response group. Talked, government bureaucracy, repeat. That's all it is. I mean, they keep saying we're fighting for auto workers, but Stellantis and GM, both gone in 2 weeks. This wasn't over the course of a decade. That's in 2 weeks. Stellantis and GM. You know, I hope that Doug Ford is right. I hope that GM does put another vehicle in Ingersol, because I don't want to see all those people lose their job. It's not right. They thought they had a job in a secure industry, and Ingersoll's a great little town, by the way. I don't know if I have any listeners there. I haven't looked, but either way, I love visiting Ingersol. That's a pretty devastating thing for that community. Can GM just look around at their worldwide production and pull something from somewhere else to make it in Ingersol? And how long will it take? And how much government support are we going to have to give them to retool their plant again? Another thing that came up yesterday regarding Ontario Premier Doug Ford was a comment that President Donald Trump made about this new ad that the Ontario government is running in America. The Ontario government is spending $75 million taxpayer dollars to run commercials in America to try and put pressure on Donald Trump to drop the tariffs. That's what they want. They want Trump to drop the tariffs. Well, Trump has seen the commercials. He mentioned it yesterday.
We're the most successful. We're believers in tariffs. And I even see foreign countries now that we are doing very well with taking ads. Don't go with tariffs. They're taking ads. I saw an ad last night from Canada. If I was Canada, I'd take that same ad also. But they're actually on television taking ads. But I do believe that everybody's too smart for that. We have a very, very big and important case coming up. We should win the case based on the legal merit.
Okay, so Donald Trump kind of likes the commercial. And I'm not surprised because Donald Trump is very much a fan of former U.S. President Ronald Reagan. He's seen the ad. He noticed Reagan was in it, and it's not going to change a thing. Nothing is going to change. He is not going to drop his tariffs because we're spending $75 million on his television networks. Good idea. Nice commercial. It was well done, but it's not effective. So are we going to keep spending $75 million on U.S. media when we know it's not going to be effective? Trump just confirmed. Yeah, good commercial. I'd probably do it too, but we're not changing. Here's Doug Ford talking about Donald Trump seeing his commercial, and he loves it, by the way. He's a little starstruck here.
I heard that the president heard our ad. I'm sure he wasn't too happy, but it's real because it was coming from the best president the country's ever seen, Ronald Reagan. So it's very effective. It's probably one of the best ads I've ever seen, and it's coming from Ronald Reagan's voice. And it's going to be focused right across the country, but also in Republican-held areas, because what I feel, the Reagan Republicans are going to be fighting with the MAGA group. And let's hope Reagan Republicans win.
That's a really weird thing to say. I mean, that sounds like a boomer pining for the good old days. And while I think a lot of people do, in an ideal, that'd be great. What Doug is trying to do is unite the right. As a conservative, he's not really interested in all conservative viewpoints. He just wants the Reagan Republicans, the so-called moderate Republicans, to be on his side. And if you have any views that Doug thinks are extreme, I guess you'd fall into the MAGA category. I think he's trying to position himself the same way here in Canada. He would consider himself a Reagan Republican, whereas Pierre would be a MAGA Republican. I don't think that the vast majority of people see it that way. You know, the left is far more fractured than the right. The left has got some real down the middle common sense people that are they're blue liberals or they're red conservatives, people that are smart about money and concerned about money, and they want to manage the books properly. But they also want to be compassionate on the issues. That's called being in the center. And that's the way we were for a very long time. Until Justin Trudeau came in and started pitting everybody against one another. That's how we got so divided. And you know what? The way the province was run during COVID is part of the problem. I'll leave it at that. If anybody wants to talk more about the different types of conservatives, though, slide into my DMs because I will happily answer that or talk about it on Friday's Listener DMs episode. A couple more things I got to play, and I'm almost at time here. Yesterday, heading into the cabinet meetings, Stephen Guilbeault, one of the least popular Liberal cabinet ministers, the guy who used to be the environment minister, is now the heritage minister. Man, I'd love that job. I would love to do that. The CBC falls under his purview. And he was talking a little bit about the CBC with a reporter. Listen to this.
What do you think of the CBC's 5-year plan?
I think there's lots of really good elements in this plan. I really like the fact that the public broadcaster wants to invest more in local news across the country. You saw some of that. Certainly, we think that more, if we can, as you know, we committed to invest more in the public broadcaster, and we believe that those additional resources will help them make sure that Canadians have access to more information, non-biased information, and more local news across the country.
And to be clear, that'll be in the budget, that promise funding.
I'm not the finance minister. I don't know what's going to be in the budget.
Well, that's a lot of nonsense. Sure, you know what's going to be in the budget. By the way, you didn't hear that wrong. If you want to hear it again, just to confirm you're not crazy, go back. He wants to give the CBC a lot more money. The CBC has rolled out a plan here to try and win back viewers, to try and win back an audience that has given up on the CBC. What was the main reason that people gave up on the CBC? Because the CBC is so heavily biased in their reporting. They have an agenda, they have an ideology, and they spout it at every turn. And not only do they do that, they do everything that they can, everything in their power, to try and make the people who disagree with them look bad. They do it every single day. And that joker right there, the heritage minister, said that he wants to give them more money so they can do more local news. I don't see a whole lot of evidence that the CBC is doing a whole ton of local news, by the way. Everything seems very syndicated and national on the CBC. And he also wants to give it to them so they can continue to provide unbiased information. That's how disconnected your government is. That's how bad it is. They actually believe that the CBC is providing unbiased information. They must know that Canadians see through that, right? They must know that any objective person can watch the CBC for just a matter of minutes and see how biased things are. You do not get an accurate reflection necessarily when you're watching the CBC of what's going on in the news. You just don't. They've got an agenda. You know, they put up panels like At Issue on Thursday nights. 4 liberals up there trying to present a balanced approach. It's almost not even possible. And they don't even declare that they're all against Pierre. Not a one of them up there supports the Conservatives, but they don't declare that bias ever. They pretend we're down the middle. This is a reasonable approach with different perspectives. No, they're all different perspectives from the same side of the street. That's all that is. It's craziness that they would even suggest. It's laughable that they would even suggest that the CBC is unbiased. I don't understand it at all. I really, really don't. One more thing. I've been talking about this semi-regularly here on the pod over the last number of days. The comments that Pierre Poilievre made about the RCMP. The suggestion that the RCMP either covered up for Justin Trudeau or didn't do their job and do a proper, thorough investigation. And if they had, that would probably have led to charges against former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I know the media is still trying to make hay about this. They're trying to suggest that this is a MAGA thing, and it's really not. Every tax-paying Canadian should be able to go to bed at night not worried that their government is as corrupt as the day is long. Nobody is above the law, including current and former prime ministers. They're not. Here's a little bit more audio of the same MP that I played for you yesterday. He's the MP for Brantford and Six Nations, Larry Brock. Larry's a good guy, and he's a former Crown prosecutor. He is on this committee, or was on the committee, that was questioning the RCMP. Just found this audio clip. Actually, it was Larry that put it out. So I want to play this for you. This is him questioning the RCMP. And at issue here, did the RCMP do a thorough, proper, unbiased investigation? And if they did they find things that would lead to criminal charges? Listen to this.
We also have recorded evidence, not just a he said, she said, recorded evidence between Jody Wilson-Raybould and the clerk of the Privy Council. I'm quoting here from Michael Warnock. The Prime Minister is quite determined, quite firm on this. He said that 4 times. Wants to know why the DPA route is not being used. He's going to find a way to get it done one way or another. He's in that kind of mood. This is really important to him. If that doesn't cry out for a specific intent, I don't know what does. What do you say about that?
What I have to say, Mr. Chair, is when we looked at this specific, and of course I'm referring to the quotes that were just mentioned here, but of course in the assessment, we did assess these comments were made. But again, we had to take a more global approach when we looked at all the comments that were made. So of course, our determination vis-a-vis the mens rea portion is based not only on some of the comments, but on the totality of the evidence, the totality of the statements that were made.
And the totality is the Prime Minister made this his personal mission to interfere in the criminal prosecution for his own political needs and the needs of SNC-Lavalin. Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
Mr. Chair, I would say that the assessment that we've conducted, again, our conclusions were that there was insufficient evidence to substantiate an offense.
Do you understand why Canadians feel there's a two-level tier justice here in Canada, that the Prime Minister is immune from prosecution because he can hide behind cabinet confidences, he can commit a litany of criminal offences and just say, sorry, cabinet confidence, I'm not going to allow the RCMP to investigate. Do you understand their concerns, sir? Do you understand Canadians' concerns?
If you quick response, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. As far as this, and we're talking about like ethics and criminality here, which sometimes seems to be intertwined. But again, as I indicated earlier, we have to follow the parameters as laid out in the criminal code.
He wouldn't even say it. He wouldn't even say what is just plain as day. You heard Larry Brock. And he's right. He's a former Crown prosecutor. He asked, do you at least understand why Canadians are a little bit concerned that there's a two-tier justice system here and that the Prime Minister is using his power to do whatever he wants, interfere in a criminal prosecution, something that benefits him politically, and you guys can't investigate it? Do you understand why Canadians are concerned about that? He didn't even acknowledge that. Bananas. I need to come up with a new word, a synonym for bananas, because I probably say that way too much, but this government is just putting it out at alarming rates, and I don't know what to do with it. I'll work on that. I'll tell you what. I'm led to believe the Prime Minister is speaking today. I will have that audio for you tomorrow and whatever else drops in the next 24 hours. I hope you like this episode. If you're a new listener, hit subscribe. I'd love to have you listening every single day. It's your daily look, just you and me in the car or when you're walking the dog or what have you. Every day, a look at the news from the lens of a conservative who also is a middle-class Canadian. Middle-class Canadians are getting railroaded. Our money is getting wasted. We're not getting good value for what we pay here. And I try and call it out on every single opportunity that I get. That's what I do every day here on Scott Fox After 9. I'm going to leave you with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth, one of my favorite songs. It's called Hey Now. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Oh,